Today's show is supported by Liberty Magic, Pittsburgh's premier speakeasy theater dedicated to the art of elevating magic. This time they are presenting David Williamson in Ridiculous, a family-friendly show where magic and comedy collide. David's signature magic is filled with jaw-dropping illusions and a very distinct sense of humor. Yes, he is a magician, but he's also been called a clown and even an anarchist. So get ready for a show with a lot of laughter. Ridiculous runs from April 2nd to May 3rd. Get your tickets at trustarts.org/magic before they disappear. This is CityCast Pittsburgh. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Roman, if there was a Pittsburgh landmark that you could rename for yourself, like purely for ego, what would it be?
I would pick in Allegheny Riverfront Park. So this is really small parklet kind of next to, I believe it's the Clemente Bridge. There's this stone arch structure.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I apologize if I'm stealing someone's landmark, but you just get such cool views of the city when you stand at different angles and look through it. It's a great spot to look out onto downtown.
I like that you chose Pittsburgh art. That's great. I think I'd want one of the eyeballs downtown. You know, not both of them. I just want one of them.
Just one?
I feel, yeah, like maybe the right eye. That's the one. That's the one that works the best on my body. So that's the one I would pick. I'm with Next Pittsburgh's Roman Haladio. We're talking about record-breaking spending in Pittsburgh film this year. A new research lab at Pitt focused on some pretty faraway places, and a Pittsburgh mystery that we have talked about here at CityCast so many times that finally seemingly has an answer. So let's start with film. 2025 brought in an estimated $300 million in economic impact. The most recent, what year before that was like $100 million. Roman, what changed? Why did we get like so much bank last year?
Yeah. So when I was speaking to Don Keyser of the film office about this, I think the kind of impression is that, you know, Pittsburgh has proved itself as a prime filming location. And I think it really started with, in recent years, the Mayor of Kingstown, this show that you've probably heard a lot about everywhere, especially when they're looking for extras. They started at Western State Penitentiary a few years ago and have been just dumping money into Pittsburgh's economy. And then, you know, it's kind of opened the floodgates and more folks and production houses are coming to Pittsburgh to kind of see the sights and get a piece of Pennsylvania's tax credit pie.
One of the things I've heard Dawn talk about when she has a sales pitch for Pittsburgh, right? Because she's been in charge of this organization for so many years and she's really got it down. It's just that Western PA, Pittsburgh, but like the region, can become anything. Like we just have like so much varied space, like geography, weather, the buildings. Like if you want new construction, we got you. If you want old row houses, we got you. You want middle of nowhere farmland, something dilapidated, hell yes, we're in. It's just funny to think about that as like a marketing tool.
Yeah, she said something very similar to me. You know, we could do everything but desert.
Yeah. Yeah, palm trees are out.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like economic impact, I guess what does that include and who actually calculates it? Like who's in charge of the receipts?
It's a kind of like unorthodox process. Pretty much in order to get this tax credit, these production houses are kind of organizing and listing out all of their expenditures and shipping it off to the state. But also, you know, the reason we have this data is the film office also collects some form of that same information. So there's kind of the official means, the thing that's getting them in Pennsylvania, this 25% tax credit. The production houses are getting this tax credit. And then Dawn and the film office do kind of a similar calculation to see what was spent in Pittsburgh. And here, you know, the number one thing, like shockingly enough, and I think it's a great example of it, is like bottled water. There are a ton of people on these sets and you have to keep them fed and hydrated. You know, Pittsburgh has a number, I think Dawn said 4 like full production teams. So we can have 4 things running at once and people are another one of those expenditures. So specifically to get a tax credit from the state of Pennsylvania, you need to be spending 60% of your budget in Pennsylvania of the film project. So that's why, something like Mayor of Kingstown, which is like entirely here, is constantly getting that full credit. And then a show like The Pit, which, pops in and films their shots to set the scene. Yeah.
I mean, I love it. I love those couple of shots, but they do it in like 2 to 3 days and then they bounce to Burbank.
Yeah. So they're nowhere near that 60% mark to get a tax credit.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what's interesting is that they're also like $100 million sounds like a lot, but when you're talking about how much films cost to produce, it's like a drop in the bucket. How do we compare in this moment to other states around us, to other states that are competitive? Like, I know we're never going to be a Georgia where they don't have a film tax credit cap. Like the limit does not exist.
Yeah.
But in Pennsylvania, it does. I've kind of lost track of how other states are doing it right now. Like, are we competitive, I guess?
Pennsylvania was the most competitive when this, or it was one of the most competitive in the early aughts when this program started.
Which is hilarious because when it first started, we only did $10 million in film tax credits.
And now we're kind of middle of the pack. Like for reference, New York, which, there's something to be said for shooting in New York. Like it's going to get more attention than Pittsburgh. But New York's budget is around $900 million. But because New York City is so popular, it also comes with a lot of incentives to shoot in its other localities everywhere else in the state. But even then, the tax credit attached to the spend is, I think it's about 40% compared to PA's 25%. It's not bad, but yeah, we certainly have some neighbors who are beating us out.
Yeah, I mean, 900 versus 100. Yeah. Should we raise it again? Like Dawn Keyser and her team are always pushing for more, understandably so. But is there any appetite for that in Harrisburg?
It's hard to put your finger on.
I feel like I can see your face trying to be polite, but also like an appetite for consensus in Harrisburg is also just like hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the number one thing. Now, if you talk to Dawn, she'll say that there is a lot of interest from folks there to get this moving, especially, and I could imagine if you follow any of the PA budget stuff, Pennsylvania needs more income. And I think that this would prove a pretty easy way to draw that in. On the other side, to your point, it's just hard to get people to agree on something, especially something that it in kind of the midst of the world feels so menial. It's a small number
art's
adjustment.
Not menial. Like we need more art. Like I feel like especially when things feel terrible, you need more things to lose yourself in and to like draw parallels and to learn.
Yeah, next time I'm in Harrisburg, I'll tell him. I'll tell him.
We'll leave it here. Like, is there an ideal amount that we should be shooting for? Like, does anyone have like that number in their head? Like, I remember when we got the 100 million, when it got raised to that number, I think Dawn was trying, if I'm remembering right, it was like around 150. It was more than 100 for sure.
Yeah. When I spoke to her, she said that 300 would feel great. And I don't know.
Good for her. I love that she just shoots for the stars.
And but the thing to consider too is, Pittsburgh is becoming more of a film location. And not just that, like Pennsylvania has this weird battle where we have two larger cities on either side of the state. Like most states have they have their New York City where people want to be. People like filming in Pittsburgh and they like filming in Philadelphia. So, I think that increasing the budget would stand to benefit both cities, not just Pittsburgh or Philly.
Any movies or shows that have taken advantage of this that we should be looking out for in the near future?
So I wasn't super excited to see this Hershey biopic. I was kind of like
very excited to see it. I don't know why. I think it's fun to lose yourself in that era and just pretend that things weren't awful then too.
You know what? It took me seeing set photos when I was working on this story. And I watched them like transform parts of Harmony, PA and parts of Southside into like the 1800s. Like it was amazing. So, I think that'll be a really fun one for the especially Pittsburgh-y people to try to like piece together what they're actually looking at with its de-aging, I guess.
Totally.
So that should be coming. I think that's this summer. Apple TV is working on a show called Parallax. I'm not super familiar with it, but it kind of, the way Don has spoken about it, it's like the next coming of this, Mayor of Kingstown. That show is wrapping up production. It's its last season this year. And Parallax is kind of taking up that mantle and being that big production in Pittsburgh.
Oh my God, I Googled this and it told me what the concept of a parallax is, and my brain can only barely comprehend. I'll come back to this. A portal to multiple parallel universes. Wow. Okay, Here we go. Anything else?
This movie, How to Rob a Bank, brought, I'm going to forget the cast list. Pete Davidson was here, and I only know because he was near my friend's house. They were filming in Perry. So there's should be a lot of Pittsburgh on big and small screens in 2026.
Yeah, Nicholas Hoult, I feel like, was spotted like all over town. So yeah, that was a big one. I wonder if he'll do any press here after the fact or come back to Bottle Rocket. That was the other thing. Like when the films are here, like then you get famous people and their friends suddenly in town for a while, and that's its own kind of buzz.
Today's episode is supported by Clearview Federal Credit Union. I actually just made a new bank account with Clearview, and the process was so easy. I set up an online appointment, and in just 30 minutes, everything got sorted. But banking can get confusing, and sometimes it's just easier to ask your questions in person. So I was really happy to hear that Clearview Federal Credit Union has new spots open, one in the Strip District and another downtown right by Market Square. They've got 23 financial centers all over the area, and you can pop into one to learn more about their 412 offer, where you can get $412 when you open their Absolute checking account and meet deposit requirements. Plus, you can tap into their free financial counseling services to meet all your financial goals. Learn more about Clearview at clearviewfcu.org/412.
Today's show is brought to you by City Theater and their production of Hedwig and the Angry Inch. This Tony Award-winning musical follows the life, loves, and heartbreaks of the legendary Hedwig, an East German rock and roll goddess. I have been meaning to see this musical forever. I know it's got a huge cult following, but the last time City Theater put on the show was in 2003. So I am very thrilled they're reviving it. It's exciting for people like me who get to check it out for the very first time, and all the so-called heads out there who will now get a chance to re-experience the show right here in Pittsburgh. Hedwig and the Angry Inch is running from May 12th to June 7th at the Greer Cabaret downtown, and it's being presented in partnership with the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. You do not want to miss this beloved, fierce, and energetic show. Tickets available at citytheatercompany.org.
All right, we're going to switch gears. I want to talk about this new space over at the University of Pittsburgh. I feel like we've talked about on CityCast just how like Pittsburgh has such deep roots in space exploration and all the technology that goes into it. We built stuff for the Apollo missions way back when, all kinds of stuff since. We did a deep dive a couple years ago about attempts to reach the moon, RIP, little peregrine. But there's this new thing. Pitt just opened a space research lab focused on biomedicine. So the stuff that happens to you if you do go to space. So what is it? What does the space look like? What are they going to do over there?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't actually seen their lab, but
I've only seen pictures because Shapiro came to visit. It looks tiny.
Oh, yeah. It really is, like to that point, I think it's more of an extension of the work that already exists at Pitt. In October of 2025, Pitt hired Kate Rubins, this former NASA astronaut, and in January, I believe it was, they secured some funding from a local entrepreneur. And they're really going to be studying this intersection of like health and space travel. Like to me, it's like almost really science fiction-y. They're talking about cell aging and cell repair, muscle degeneration, disease progression, like all of that stuff. And I was sitting there listening to this and I'm thinking of like, oh, we got to travel around the black hole and we're getting spaghettified and then put back together. Like, it's a little less intense than that.
Yeah.
But, basically when humans are in space, they don't have regular gravity or atmosphere, and they're moving at such fast speeds too that, the body kind of reacts differently. their kind of pitch for this lab was they're going to study how humanity exists in the space of such little resource. It's hard to get oxygen up there, and their tools work differently and the body's working differently. So by studying these things, they're hoping to kind of apply it to maybe even communities on Earth where they have less resources.
Well, that's an interesting application. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I feel like the piece of this that I was aware of before, and they've talked about like them being part of this, is the Kelly twins, like Senator Mark Kelly, who was in contention to be a vice presidential candidate at the same time Josh Shapiro was. He was also like one of those lawmakers that gotten under fire, I don't know how to say it, with Chris Deluzio when they were talking about, hey, Yin service members don't follow illegal orders. Like, he's been in the ether for a long time. He's the husband of Gabby Giffords, but he has an identical twin. And he went to space. His twin did not. So, like, there was all this stuff when he came back of, like, they studied both of them to see, like, did y'all age differently? Are things different now? And so those twins, in addition to some other folks, are going to be part of this space lab. Like, I think that's just so neat. And also just, like, once again, great that we're getting, like, folks like that to come to Pittsburgh and experience it. Because, like, Senator Kelly lives in Arizona.
I love sci-fi. I get expressed to you. Like, I'm not a science guy. I've got my English degree and whatever. I try to, like, absorb as much as I can to teach someone else. But like, it's just really awesome to be thinking about how complex of interactions we're talking about. Like in Pittsburgh, it's so wild that we can bring twins in and see what's going on between them.
And the University of Pittsburgh like has such a rich history of medical research anyway. And I mean, I was thinking about it as I said it, like that space is tiny, but like so is everything that happens in space. So maybe that's by design, Yeah.
I'm really excited to, this is kind of one of those stories too, where, covering the opening is great, but I'm really excited to see them again in a year or 5, like see what's progressed and kind of what's changing too. And when they're speaking about, working with such little resources and in such intense conditions, like I'm almost thinking about WALL-E. Like,
he goes back to a movie.
Yeah, but they're solving a really, or they're looking into really niche problems that come with these really broad applications for how we exist on Earth and how we keep each other healthy.
Today's show is brought to you by Window Nation. They're running their The More You Buy, The More You Save sale, where you could save up to 50% off on all the windows for your home and get 0% interest financing for 5 years. Pittsburgh's got some old homes, and if yours has windows that are broken or leak or are stuck shut, now is the time to consider an upgrade. I love cracking open my bedroom windows and napping when there is a light cross breeze, and you're also going to want to head into spring and summer with windows that are nice and easy to open. You can choose from over 1,500 styles and colors, and once your appointment is scheduled, Window Nation's team finishes the installation in just under 1 day. They also do their due diligence and measure 3 times to make sure your windows are the perfect fit. The windows are energy efficient and also come with a lifetime warranty. And hurry, the sale ends soon. Schedule a fast, free consultation now at windownation.com.
Okay, so last up, maybe the end of the road for a long-standing Pittsburgh mystery. So you think we've maybe found the answer to who is Carrie as it relates to the Carrie blast furnaces. So let's not drag this out. Who was she? What do they know?
Yeah, I just want to preface too that all of this research was done by Rivers of Steel historians. They're the group that manages the Carrie blast furnace site. But Carrie was someone's cousin. The owners of this iron production facility, the Phones brother, they named their blast furnace after their cousin, Carolyn Clark, and whose father, William Clark, was the kind of general manager of the site. She was kind of a traditional, like, Gilded Age woman. She was held to pretty high familial expectations. Her job was to increase the Clarks' social standing in Pittsburgh, and she did that by all metrics, according to these historians. Now, that being said, the weird part is that so little was known about her. They found her by accident. They were just looking for some early references to the Carrie blast furnace, and there's a single sentence that mentions that Miss Carolyn Clark, Carrie Clark, performed the quote unquote baptismal services for the blast furnace, and kind of lit the furnace. So, from that one sentence, they were able to connect her to William Clark and connect her to the Phones brothers who started the site, and then kind of line up much more of her life.
I mean, if you're not familiar, I feel like most of us have encountered the Carrie blast furnaces. They're over in Rankin. They're off by themselves. You can see Kennywood from them. But usually it's like the place for concerts or tours, or like the Irish Festival's been out there a bunch, things like that. Like that's how we experience them, as relics. But when these things were built, I mean, they were just as massive, if not more so, as what we experienced them. But they were constantly going. So when you're talking about like this baptism, it literally was like flipping a switch and then it never turns off again. Yeah. Like it's a reactor used to smelt iron ore into, I think, liquid iron, if I'm getting that right. So it's all part of that steelmaking process that helped create the reputation that we all still live in today. And I think it's funny that so often these spaces were named for women. Do they have any sense of why these names came to be, or named after someone, I guess, at minimum?
The term that Kirsten Payne, the historian I interviewed, kind of referred back to was like polite sexism, like sexism with a veneer of kindness. So basically they would incorporate women's names, specifically women in their life, like a wife or a daughter.
Yeah.
Especially.
So often they were feminized, like the Eliza Furnace, that kind of thing.
So, there's kind of two parts of this. The most obvious and most concrete is that it literally tied the mother or daughter of this family to the site. Women weren't allowed on the property record. So instead of having them sign off on this piece of paper, they named it after them. So it was like intrinsic.
We won't give you stocks or ownership or real rights, but we'll name it after you.
Yeah. And it's even kind of worse than that, too. That was my initial assumption, too, because it's less about this woman having ownership and more about them creating like the line of succession so they could give it to the next man. They just wanted that proof of family. And then also, if you read a lot of historical documents in about Pittsburgh's steel industry, these steel workers really did feminize the furnaces and mills, because to Kirsten's point was like, this is the point of creation. Like it's kind of that birthplace of that steel. So it's really messy and not particularly good.
I'm experiencing a range of emotions over here. Like I hate like the illusions, like they're workhorses. They never get to rest. They're where things are born. They need to be taken care of. They're very strong, but very delicate. Like, I hate this. I hate everything about this comparison. Yeah.
Polite sexism. Like you're putting this thing on a podium, and it is really not. It's just kind of rude and awful.
Well, why was it a mystery then in the first place? Like, if part of the idea of it is that it creates a line of succession, well then, I mean, and especially in a rich family, like who then owns it later. So you just kind of go backward from there. Like usually rich people have records, like they have the resources to collect things like letters and birth and death dates and things like that. Like usually they're easier to trace than the rest of us.
So this is kind of the unsatisfying part of the story. It's that those things oddly don't exist for Carrie. Carrie, she was the oldest daughter sandwiched between a couple of brothers. So it, like I mentioned, it was her responsibility to these Gilded Age families to marry well and kind of elevate the whole family. And she married this guy, Bartlett Arkell. He was a son of a New York State publisher and this guy wanted to be a politician. Kirsten's assumption is that there was some type of controversy surrounding this. it should have been Pittsburgh high society's like event of the season, this wedding between a Pittsburgh iron magnate's daughter and this political aspirant, but no one references it. Kirsten's, assumption is that, if you look at the dates, the marriage and the birth of their first child is just about 9 months. So, there could be some of that, like, just get it over with so everything looks right on paper. And then, kind of to add to the weirdness, Carrie died young, only about 2 years after her wedding. And instead of being buried as an Arkell, she was shipped back to Pittsburgh on a very expensive refrigerated train, probably, and buried as a Clark. Her gravestone reads Carolyn Clark, wife of Bartlett Arkell. So, they've really cut off this marriage from her life that we don't know much about in the first place. And then, of course, like Eliza, like these other mills in Pittsburgh, the line of succession, so to speak, is so closely tied to the owner that the assumption was always that the Phones would have named it after a mother or a daughter or someone closer to them, but they chose a cousin. So it was just kind of this combination of factors and oddities in Carrie's life that made her disappear, even though she was buried in the Homewood Cemetery, only about 4 miles from Carrie Blast Furnace.
That's fascinating. I mean, gosh, like when you think about that, like they've solved the mystery to some extent, but it sounds like there's a lot more mystery left to go.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I kind of wonder now if they're going to do anything with her story, Like, I just feel like Rivers of Steel always has like such amazing tour offerings anyway, which as I'm saying that, I'm realizing like I think we're coming into their tour season. Usually they kick off like around April or May.
I can't imagine they wouldn't, kind of having the record reopen now. It's a weird article in the sense that, I get some responses from readers, but this one generated a lot of response. I've talked to a ton of people who worked in mills or had grandparents who worked in mills or who were like docents at Carrie Blast Furnace who didn't know who Carrie was.
I'm sure they got asked this question constantly.
Yeah. Pittsburgh is clearly interested in Carrie and wants to know who she is and to meet her. So seeing the furnace is the number one way to do that.
I asked that question and then I looked it up. They absolutely have Carrie Clark now listed in their one that focuses on feminine history at the mill. So folks that work there, but like the lead sentence now includes her name and why she was important. So sounds like they're being thoughtful about that. We'll put a link in our show notes just about like how to connect with Rivers of Steel if it interests you. Roman, thank you so much for all your reporting. You can find all of Roman's stuff in Next Pittsburgh. Thank you. You'll have to come back.
Yeah, sounds good.
That is all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. You can support us by becoming a CityCast Pittsburgh neighbor. All the details are at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with more from around the city. We'll talk to you soon. You went to Wall-E. My first thought was Project Hail Mary.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm lagging behind.
It was really good. It was like, I mean, if you like The Martian, it's exactly the same spirit, just a very different plot.